Hi guys, we are Code and AI. Today, I'll be giving you a short demo of new features that we have released, also the features on which we have built upon. So let's start. First thing, what we have is a docstring generation. You will see a button which says generate docstring in front of your every div. So if you click on it, it'll generate a docstring for you. Let's try to understand why docstrings are important. Any code when written, it's very easy to understand that code if that code has a very detailed docstring which is very relevant, takes care of all the arguments which are getting passed, tells you the actual processing and gives you the return statement which it is returning. But more often than not, you will find developers, since they have to ship as fast as possible, they are missing this very detailed information, which is to write a docstring. On an average, it takes around 5 to 15 minutes to write a detailed docstring, which encompasses the entire function logic. But what if I gave you this entire thing in a single click and you can get a detailed docstring? This is what we have showed here. For example, this function is actually a complex one. It's trying to do 10 different things. But let's read the docstring for once. It tells me that the function performs a gradient descent on the loss function using Ablim optimizer. The arguments are build loss fn, num steps, which defaults to 200. The value is coming from here. The optimizer and the learning rate of this is 0.1. This value is coming from this where we have defined it. And it tries to return the operation that performs gradient descent. So writing this docstring will take 5 to 10 minutes, but you will get it for every one of your functions. And anyone, even a new developer who is trying to onboard on your code, for him or her, it will be very easy to understand the entire code. This is first feature. Coming to the second one, which is generate diagram. We have always seen in multiple cases that when you talk to a developer and ask him, can you explain me our entire service? He'll say we have 10 different flows. Our calls are going from here to this function to this class, then it's landing to this service, and this is actually what is happening. So this entire knowledge is very tribal to one developer. Passing this knowledge to another developer who's onboarding onto the code is very hard because again you have to tell him every other detail, or else you have to very well document your code. But we always find in startups or even in the very matured companies that these things are not available, correct? So we need a diagram which tells me the entire function flow in one single go. Right now, what we give is the diagram for one single file, but we are actually working towards giving you the diagram of your entire repository. So it will give you a diagram of all these functions and services calling each other in one single flow. So let's test it. We have a generate diagram button here. I'll click on it. It will run and it will ask me to save the diagram at some place. Let's see. I'll say banking. So I just save banking one. I'll open it. So this is the diagram which is generated. So instead of reading this entire code and trying to understand what this code is doing, what as a developer I'll do is I'll understand, okay, there's a call which is going from transfer form. It is going to transfer to, and then we have withdrawal and deposits, and every other operation is trying to log. So if I have to write another function, I know I also have to log, and for logging I have to call log operations. Good. If I have to get balances, I won't be writing my own function. What I'll do is I'll just see, okay, has sufficient balances calling get balances. I can either call has sufficient balance or directly call get balance and implement my logic. So this way we'll reduce code, repeatability, and make sure that your code is way more modular. And this kind of view will help everyone to understand how function level your code is trying to call one function to another. Moving forward, we have quick fixing. Reading this code is inherently hard for anyone because it is very cluttered. And trust me, we see this problem more often than not. Why? Because every developer is different. The way one developer will write a code is very different to another developer, correct? And we need some kind of consistency. How do we get it? We'll get that by using this quick fix button here. I'll click on this quick fix button. What I'll do is it'll generate a diff for me. Okay. Inside this diff, I'll be able to see, okay, this entire thing which was wrongly written, not linted properly, was written in this particular format, which is very much readable. Even a single person can understand, okay, this is the array that you have created, you have a dictionary that you're running, and then you're returning something, correct? This makes sure that you have proper spacing, proper comments getting added, proper lining which is done. Few things that we want to highlight here is we are just not your normal linting. We try to make sure your code is as Pythonic as possible. So you'll see fixes which are done to make sure your code looks way more Pythonic. And we are adding multiple features, some of which are already mentioned here. Let's say making sure you have comparison, Boolean, checking not in, is not, instances, checking your exceptions, checking how you're passing your exceptions, and so on and so forth. And we are keep on adding more features into this. Moving forward, this is the one where we spend a lot of our last 2 weeks building it, which is optimize. We say that the code which is written is always not very optimized in the first format. You always find developers focusing on just the code logic, not making sure how we can optimize this code so that it is way more fast, make sure that it has way lesser redundancies, make sure that it has way lesser irrelevant calls. So let's say if we are getting this kind of a code, if this code is given for review, it can happen that the developer may just approve this piece of code or the person who's reviewing it, but we have a lot of inefficiencies here. Let's try to see that. I'll just click on this optimize button here. Let's see what happens. First and foremost, it tries to make sure that we have used, let's say, this function, filter eligible users. This is using a list. Again, it is trying to implement something here. This entire thing can be done using a list comprehensions and also by using multiple if blocks. Okay. So what we are using is we are using for loop instead of a long list comprehension, making sure we use a generator, not use a list comprehension so that it will make sure your functions are faster. We are using nested if blocks, which can be reduced in a single statement, which makes sure that Python is not computing it again and again. We have string concatenation. This is very often, more often than not, we see people trying to do string concatenation like this. If you do f string instead of this, you will find your functions getting 50% more faster, which will make sure your latency is reduced. If you're running something on AWS Lambda, you can save every second, basically costing on every second that is happening. Similarly, we have this where we are using if else and a fallback assignment, and we are not using that properly. How we can make sure our fallbacks are very proper, and we have OR operations we have placed inside it. OR operations are way more faster than your genuine if else which is written there. We also have while loop and a break statement. This is what we recommend every developer not to use, that if you're using a while loop and inside that you're using an if condition and then trying to do some kind of processing, we tell every developer to make sure that all the processing is done inside the while statement and not after it, so that it makes sure your processing is way more faster. So one single code can have these many inefficiencies, correct? And these things will genuinely pass from your code reviews and nobody will even notice. Why? Because your functionality is correct. And this is what we need to solve and make sure that your code is way more optimized to run. So if I have to accept this, what I'll do is I'll come to this notifications here and I'll just click on apply. Now once I click on apply, it is basically, it has changed my code. Let's now move. Okay, I can also show you a diff here. Let's say if I see this code, which is written like in 4 lines, trying to use or if, which is also not feasible. You should have used a generator instead of this, and read this line. This line is even more readable, and also does the job in 50% lesser time. So it's cherries on both hands. Let's move forward. Lastly, we have review. So we also want to give you a feature where you review your entire code and find out errors in your reviewing. So you have this button, review code. You click on it, it'll create a basically it'll underline all the lines which it finds that it's not correct. Again, you could have used a generator here. So instead of a list, we'll click on this bulb icon and it'll fix it. Secondly, if we'll click why it is showing red line here, you will find that we can use a set. That is very good. If you use set, you won't be having duplicate elements and you can use lesser space. You can click on this, and the complexity also decreases from OFN to OFN login. And also, if you see this, basically we are using in a lot of times. If this is equal to this, if this is equal to this, if this is equal to this, instead of that, what we can use is if fruits equal in this, and we added a set, correct? And n number of times apple will come, it won't impact because one entry of that is already there in set. These kind of optimizations are very easy and it's very intuitive. You don't have to invest a lot of your time. In 30-40 seconds, you will be done with these. And lastly, we have a masterpiece, which is security. Security is one thing which is overlooked time and again. We see that more often than not, people are not focusing on it. We have also raised PRs in one of the GitHub repository which has 15,000 stars, and we have found vulnerabilities like DDoS attack happening, SQL injection happening in those kind of repositories. So, and this is very common. So let's imagine this code is written and given it for review. You'll just see, okay, this is doing a proper get call and you're able to extract the data. It's doing the functionality pretty good. Let's approve it. But what we can do is we can just run this button of security once, click on it. It'll just highlight every other place where it finds vulnerability. So let's click on it and see what the issue is. So it tells you, okay, shit, we have a SQL injection. Okay, why we are having SQL injection? Why? Because we have not given the data properly. Anyone can brute force their username and password and make sure that your SQL database is bombarded with different credentials. Correct? How to fix it is basically click on this bulb icon. You will see two different things. One is a real world GitHub example. If you click, it'll take you a proper analysis of what SQL injection is and give you a proper GitHub example. Or else you can directly click on this and fix the issue. Correct? As simple as that. Secondly, we came to this issue. We found, okay, this is having a DDoS attack. Why it is having a DDoS attack? Why? Because we didn't capture anything. We just captured exception and we passed it. We didn't do any operation. We didn't even log it. Let's imagine someone is trying to bombard your servers and you just did this. You won't be even having data which will tell you which IP addresses we're trying to do that or which service we're trying to do that. Correct? We need those things to be embedded in your code. So what you can do is you can directly click on this and it will reduce the possibility of DDoS attack. What it does a logging operation and tells you that you have to import a logger. Correct? Lastly, we also have secrets. This is a hardcode secret. This is more often than not you will find people who are doing scriptings. They just reveal their secrets. Even in big tech, I don't want to reveal the name of the companies, but we have found places where database passwords and secrets are running very openly for months, and InfoSec teams are not able to capture that. Correct? If you click on it, it'll just convert your entire secret into environment variable, which you can use very efficiently. Over here also I'm getting a vulnerability. Let's see what it is. If I'll click here, okay, this is a good one. It tells you that there's no timeout. Okay, every call that we need to do, there should be a timeout. Why? Because we want to make sure that all the downstream services that we have are not bombarded with the actual request that we are getting. Okay, if they are not responding. So we'll just implement this. It implemented a timeout of 10 seconds. Now, depending upon the response of your service, you can reconfigure it or configure it. So guys, these were the latest improvements that we have done. We understand we are not perfect right now, but our speed of reaching that perfection is very fast. And with your feedback, I'm sure that we'll be there very soon. Thank you for staying. Any feedback, we are all open. you can just hit us and we'll be there for you. Thank you so much.